Hi, I'm Cameron Humphreys with Humphreys Outdoor Power, and today I want to talk about one of the most overlooked tractors we sell. I'm talking about the BX1880. Now, everybody loves the BX series. It's awesome. It's a perfect lawnmower tractor combination for a lot of those small yard applications, maybe even if you have a little hobby farm or something like that. But I do think that a lot of people overlook the smallest in the BX lineup, and that's the 1880. This thing's a powerful tool. Let's dive in and tell you why. So we're gonna start here at the front of the tractor with this front end loader, the LA344. This is the exact same loader that you get on the BX2380 and the BX2680. It's got skid steer quick attach. It's got right around 500 pounds lift capacity functionally. So this is gonna help you move mulch, dirt. Essentially, it's like an automated wheelbarrow, right? I mean, it's not gonna pick up anything huge, but it is gonna save your back, and it is gonna make those jobs a lot easier. So hauling stuff around, again, mulching comes to mind whenever I think about this little guy. Because of its size, it makes the front end loader of this guy a little bit more versatile. You can get into some of those smaller spots that you can't necessarily get a big tractor into, and for that reason, I love it. One of the other cool things about this is the skid steer quick attach. So there are a lot of really cool options we can do with this tractor. We can put pallet forks on it, which I know personally I keep pallet forks on my tractor almost all the time, way more often than I've got the bucket, because then you're not limited by length when you go to pick stuff up. You can also throw a third function valve on this, and you can put a little grapple, and those have been really popular. So I think the place where the grapples shine, especially on this size tractor, is if you're moving a lot of brush piles. So if you've got a huge brush pile down there of treetops or something that maybe some loggers have left on your property, or maybe you've just got your own burn pile that you're wanting to move from here to over there, with that grapple, you can go in and grab these. And those things aren't necessarily very heavy, so the 500-pound lift capacity is not a concern. But what it does do is it grabs it very well and moves it very well across your property. So again, I think that's one of the main things, and this isn't necessarily different from the BX1880 to, like I said, the 23 or 26. However, it's the same lift capacity. So if you're balling on a budget a little bit, you can get the exact same lift capacity here with this 1880 as you can with a tractor with more horsepower. So something to consider when you're talking about the functionality for your dollar. One of the cool features about these BXs, and again, this is not just on the BX1880, this is across the board with the entire BX series, but we can pop this front end loader off if we want to mow. And we can do that without even getting off the seat. We've got a video, and I'll put the link in the description below to that video on how to take this loader off, but you literally don't have to get off the machine to do that. That's one of the things that makes this BX series in general so popular. But again, I don't want to sleep on the fact that the 1880 comes with the exact same functionality. So again, balling on a budget, this guy's giving you all the features of bigger tractors for a little smaller price point. So now we're going to take a look at the thing that sets this apart from the other BXs, and that's the engine. So if we pop this open, we're going to get a look at this 16.6 horsepower rated Kubota diesel engine. 3-cylinder, liquid cooled. It's got the radiator back here. It's an awesome engine. Kubota diesel engines are probably among the best in the world. We know that for a fact. These little BXs in general run for what seems like a very, very long time. But I think a lot of people get hung up with the horsepower, with this being only rated at 16.6 horses. And I think, honestly, a lot of people think it's 18 because the model number is 18. I think Kubota kind of rounds up a little bit. Be that as it may, I think a lot of people mistake how much horsepower it takes to do the things that they want to do. And I think a lot of people overemphasize horsepower quite a bit, which is why everyone seems to overlook this tractor. So horsepower really matters if we're pulling anything. So if we're dragging big logs, for example. Another time horsepower comes into play is if we've got like a big implement on it and we need to turn big blades or something like that. Or if we're going through really heavy like grass if we're mowing, right? That's when the horsepower is really going to start to shine. We pair with this 16.6 horsepower diesel engine. We pair it with a 48 or 54-inch deck, which is completely appropriate for a diesel where we're going to see more torque anyway than like a regular gas engine. It can perfectly well handle heavy grass with a 48 or 54-inch deck. It's not a problem at all. Is it going to give you that same cozy, comfy feeling with a 23 or 26 if it's really wet and you just have to mow? Maybe not. But we're also moving up in deck sizes whenever we get to 23 and 26, where you're dealing with a 60-inch deck. If you size this guy appropriately, and to be honest, the biggest deck you can put on the frame is a 54 because the width or the length of the tractor won't allow you to put a 60-inch and still turn. If you pair this appropriately, there shouldn't be any grass that you can't mow. And it should be able to handle hills and heavy grass and wet grass. This thing is way more functional than people give it credit for. And I think that's the biggest reason why it's so often overlooked. But I do think people get hung up on horsepower a lot. And this isn't just on the BX side of things. This goes all the way to the L. I mean, there's a reason why the L2502 is more popular than the L3902. And it's that it'll do almost everything that the 3902 at a lower price point. This is the exact same thing, just with the BX series. This tractor will do almost everything a BX1880 will do. Now, again, you're going to see those differences if you're pulling a lot of stuff, and you might have applications where you legitimately do need more horsepower. But I think it's important to not overemphasize the horsepower for your particular application. Now, all that said, it's not just the horsepower that you're giving up on this machine. We lose our functionality for the tilt wheel, and we also lose our armrests. So those are the other things that we're giving up. Again, those are creature comforts at best. I'm not sure how much they're actually going to impact the performance of the machine. So if you're looking for just the best budget tractor you can get, that's going to check off the most boxes for you and your property and your needs, I'm not sure that armrests are going to make that much of a difference. But it is something to note that you are giving up with the BX1880. Sitting on the machine now, we're going to go over some of the controls. We're just going to take kind of a glance around what you're going to see if you're sitting on it, and then we will start here on the left. So this is a PTO selector. So this is going to select between the mid PTO, both PTOs, and the rear PTO down there at the bottom. So that means whenever I shove this forward into that J-hook, like so, it's going to turn on whichever PTO I have selected here. So right now it's set to mow with, but you can obviously change that pretty easily. That's going to be our brake down there. We've got all of our lights and everything right here. This would be where the steering wheel tilt would be, but again, we don't have that option with this machine. Just the regular dash here. Now the one thing to point out, they're using the same dash here for all the BX models. That's where you want to run your loader, at that mark. Although technically I would probably run it there at that PTO. You're just going to get a little bit more utility out of it. It's going to respond a little bit better. But you do need to pay attention to those markings whenever you're working. Now, back to this backhoe thing. You cannot get a backhoe on any BX model other than the BX23S. So, if you need a backhoe, it's going to be that 23S model. It makes the decision a little bit easier. For the rest of these guys, the BX1880, 2380, 2680, you're not going to be able to use a backhoe. But temperature gauge here, fuel gauge here. As we move down, we've got our throttle, which is pretty standard. Just pull that down for more horsepower, push it forward for less. Key switch, and again, our glow plugs are going to be right there, that halfway mark. So if we were to start this, you'd want to turn it halfway, and then the light on the dash will go off whenever it's time to turn the key. These are the controls that I was talking about to remove the front end loader. On this side, just going real quickly over this would be the jack stand, so you'd flip it up, curl the bucket to where it fell down on the jack stand. Once the weight was on that, you can pull up this lever, which essentially acts as the pin that goes in there. On the other side, we have the exact same pin, and that's this guy right here. It'll be the pin. You're curled up, get it out of this little cradle, and then once it's separated, you'll turn the machine off, You'll hit your joystick like so, spin it around to clear the lines. We'll reach down here, pull this lever up, and that'll release all of our hydraulic lines. At that point, we will be disconnected entirely from the machine. So, continuing to move forward, as we look down here, this knob is going to control the free fall on our 3-point. This guy is going to be a deck height adjustment. Now keep in mind that top thing, that's kind of important. So the 3-point and the mid-mount PTO, or drop, are tied together. So if you wanted to lower your 3-point all the way down, but you didn't want your deck all the way down, that's why you would put it at this top point. The rest of the time, if you were, say, to mow at 3 inches, that means your rear PTO is going to drop to 3 inches as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's how you do that. The other pedal there is a differential lock, so you can hit that with your heel if you get real stuck. This guy is just a seat, slide for that. And then as we look over here, we've got our high and low range. We've got our 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive selector. This would be any kind of rear remote we might have installed on the back. This one currently doesn't have one. Obviously the joystick for the loader. This is going to lock the joystick for the loader, so if we move that forward, this thing won't spin. If we move it back, it'll unlock. And then this guy's gonna be to raise and lower the 3-point. Obviously safety belt, want that up anytime the roll barrel is on. And then you've got your fuel tank here. I believe it's 6.6 gallons of diesel fuel, preferably off-road diesel for that. Standard 3-point here as well. So we take the top link off because this came from our lot outside, and for whatever reason the top link seemed to disappear, but it's got a wonderful little spot right here for the top link to come out. And you can run a lot of different implements, and I think this is kind of where we see how useful these things can be. I can still run a 50-inch tiller on the back of this. I can run a 42, 48-inch rotary mower on the back if you have heavy stuff that you need to take down. You can pull a grader box, you can pull a grader scraper. This can do all the stuff the big boys can do, just at a little bit smaller scale. So you just need to make sure that you are pairing this machine with the right size of equipment so that horsepower is a non-issue, but in most cases, the horsepower is exactly that, a non-issue. So this has been our overview of the BX1880. Again, one of the most slept on, most useful pieces of equipment that Kubota sells. It's in one of the categories it's the most popular. Kubota has kind of owned the market in what would be considered the sub-compact tractor mower combination for a very long time. But I do think people tend to gravitate towards that BX2380 and the 2680. And that's not without its merit, right? I mean, you can go up to a 60-inch deck, you get the tilt wheel, you get the armrest. Those are all really nice features, but I do think it's important to not completely overlook this 1880 if you're looking for a really good budget tractor to get started on your little hobby farm or just around the property in general. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like. Make sure to subscribe if you like more content like this. And again, comment if you have any suggestions for future videos. In the meantime, thanks and have a wonderful day.